Hello, Sharks fans. I'm Dan Rusanowski. You are listening to another Teal Town podcast.
Thanks, Dan Rusanowski. Good evening, everyone. It is July 1st, 2019. And for Sharks fans, this one's a toughie. This one is probably got to be one of the toughest free agent frenzy days in some time. But we'll break it down. We'll get it to you. So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Teal Town Live. I'm your host, Eric Curra. To all our friends out in Canada, we want to say Happy Canada Day to you, and especially to my plenty of friends in Saskatchewan. Go Riders. Good to you. Joining me, the other guy who spells his name the right way, that's not named Eric Carlson. He is the guy who still can't put his laundry away. It's Eric Landy. Good evening, bud.
Hey, it's a lot. Well, actually, I wouldn't say it's even a lot better. I'm still in the middle of redoing The Office, although it is coming together. And we should be getting an AJ-like audio feed coming in pretty soon. So,
nice.
Yeah.
Hey, now, as AJ would put it. As always, to be a part of the show, there are multiple ways to interact with us, chat with us, and fellow Sharks fans in the YouTube chat on the page or the app. You can also follow us at tealtownusa, but do yourselves a favor, hit us up on the Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, and the YouTube channel. If I'm not mistaken, I think we are very close to 1,600 subscribers. So by all means, let's tell all your friends, folks. Just tell all your friends to join us here. We're gonna try to have a good time tonight. How's that? So with that, Landy, should we rip the cord off or rip the Band-Aid off?
Yeah, I think it's that time to rip the Band-Aid off.
We I think kind of saw this coming, and I think with the cap hit or with the cap number at 81.5, no, not 11.5, as I think many of you have discussed on the Twitter machine and on Reddit before. I can't believe I'm saying this. Joe Pavelski is no longer a San Jose Shark. He is now a member of the Dallas Stars, signing a deal that, well, it's for 3 years. And I think there's definitely deja vu all over again as a player who wanted 2, or the team wanted 2. The player wanted 3 and some more money. But Pavelski signs a 3-year, $21 million deal with the Dallas Stars. That's $7 million AAV on the cap hit. Landy, before we reminisce, I'll ask you, what did you think? I mean, we kind of saw this coming, but what did you think overall?
Yeah, I mean, okay, I think I've got one of two minds. From the sentimentality standpoint, and as far as what the player means to the franchise, it's a gut-wrenching loss. I mean, it's like Owen Nolan leaving. It's like, I don't know. I mean, Larionov really wasn't, that much. I mean, he was a fan favorite, yes, but he wasn't too much of like a real franchise type Shark. I mean, I think to me it's reminiscent of Owen leaving more so than Patty, and I think because of the extra emotion and the extra leadership that Joe brings, it's not exactly the same as Owen Nolan, because I think Owen Nolan had a little bit more of a bite, but it's that heart and soul kind of player leaving. So on that standpoint, it was a really, really tough day today. From a financial standpoint, I mean, guys, the writing was on the wall during the summer. I mean, a previous summer. The fact that Joe Pavelski went into the year without a contract, I think was pretty eye-opening. I would say that he wanted to bet on himself because he figured, the Sharks would probably lowball him a little bit, and that he was worth more and that he was going to have the prove-it season, and he did. The term is okay. We're talking 3 years, so the term is decent for a player that's turning 35. The annual cap hit, though, I mean, it's $7 million a year. Somebody who's got some questionable injury history now. I mean, he suffered pretty much 3 concussions last season alone. So, it leaves definitely a question as to the health of the player. But I look at it the same way as Patrick Marleau leaving for greener pastures. He ultimately, the money was what talked, and I don't blame him. He's got to set up his family, and he's got to set up the generations to come of Pavelskis. And you know what, in the same situation I probably would have done the same. But I think from the Dallas standpoint, it's a risk. It's a little bit of a risk. And then it's just, it sucks. I don't foresee it being one of those where he doesn't finish the last year of the contract. I feel like he'll close it out in Dallas. And you know what? Dallas Stars are getting a hell of a player. Puck guy, I believe you are muted. Well, I mean, I guess I'll vamp for a little bit more. Yeah, financially it didn't make sense. And then we also got the news that Timo, kind of came in at the cap number that he did. I won't spoil alert for the rest.
Spoiler alert.
For the rest of the Canada Day
festivities. Gotta tease these guys to stay with the show while they recover from cutting the onions, Landy.
Yeah, I with the cap hit that Timo ended up taking, it makes sense as to why they couldn't keep both.
And there's still plenty more to deal with. But going back on his time in San Jose, Pavelski, I mean, look at these ranks. I mean, yes, if you're not named Patrick Marleau or Joe Thornton, I mean, these are pretty good. He played 963 games in San Jose, regular season, of course. 355 goals. That's second on the all-time list. 406 assists and 761 points. Those are each third. You can take a guess who the top 2 are. 60 game-winning goals. That's nearly 1 out of 6 of his goals were game winners. And then we talk about playoffs. 48 playoff goals, tied second with Logan Couture in that one. And then a quarter of those, Landy, were game winners in the playoffs. And I can think of just a handful that were in overtime. I remember the one against Dallas in 2008. The ended in minute 5 into overtime after the Sharks were down 2 goals, facing elimination. You could talk about the game winner in game, I think it was game 4 against Colorado in 2010. The game after, the infamous Dan Boyle,
own goal. Yeah.
I mean, there's plenty of them. I mean, what and chat will go to you, but first up, Landy, what's your favorite Pavelski memory?
Oh my goodness, I think it had to be the dueling hat tricks between him and Martin St. Louis in Tampa Bay.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and he is just the personification of doing everything the right way. He's the personification of, you put in enough hard work and it will pay off. And this is a guy who didn't have the so-called talent when he started. He was undersized. He couldn't skate. He beat the odds as far as where he was drafted and into what he became. It's the story of perseverance. It's the story of a homegrown superstar. And you know what? I think the biggest thing is the fact that he was able to reconcile the Sharks locker room after the captaincy was stripped from Marleau, after it was stripped from Thornton. They needed a cohesive voice and somebody who they could rally upon. And under his tenure, you had a Stanley Cup final appearance. You had a Western Conference Finals appearance. You had an epic second round matchup, against a bitter rival, and just, it ended unfortunately, but of all of the accolades that we could give this player, I think his biggest contribution, and I think the biggest thing is just how much heart and soul he gave to the organization. And he won't be replaced. And I dare say he's probably a rafter player if I had to put my guess on it.
Yeah, if the Sharks ever do a Ring of Honor or a Hall of Fame, he better be up there, for sure. Well, let's get to the audio that we have. This is courtesy of TSN, up in the Great White North. Joe Pavelski talking about what it eventually came down to, among other things, with James Duthie.
Wanted to be able to go to another contending team, and that was probably factor number one. Is they got a good goalie, they got some great young D, and some high end forwards. So it was once we got there, took the visit, and really felt comfortable in the city. They came right to the top.
It's fascinating to go through reasoning with players, and clearly that was the number one thing for you that third year. Is it still tough when it comes down to the decision when, okay, you can go to San Jose, but on 2 years, and you can stay in the place where you're comfortable, but that extra year means so much to you that you're willing to leave? Why?
You know what? Some of it was obviously financial too. There was a little bit of money. They could have came up a little higher. In this cap world, there's so much available, and that's the end of the day. I believe turn 35 here in a week or two, and I'll be 35, 36, 37. I see guys exceed expectations all the time at those numbers, and I believe over the last 5-6 years, we've earned the right to kind of negotiate our stance there, and it was important. I think I want to play more than 3 years, but I felt I wasn't putting any team in a tough position to commit that long, and I've just really liked that number. It seemed a little stability for us. We got a family, and I don't want to be jumping around every year to 2 years, knowing I want to play more hockey, and this gives us a little stability.
Well, thank you for saying the money, because the money always factors into it, but nobody ever says it. So thank you for saying
absolutely. it. The biggest thing with this process, it was just fun being honest with some teams. Just being like, what, we're probably not going to be coming. And some teams, and you just tell them you probably need to be at here at this seat. It's refreshing, and I couldn't have had better places to go visit and spend time with good people. Tampa was great, and all these areas. There was a lot of good people in hockey, and I got to spend a lot of good time with a lot of them.
Well, refreshing to hear your reasoning. We know you have to go, so thanks for spending a couple of minutes with us.
All right, thanks, guys.
That's Joe Pavelski, who moves on from the San Jose Sharks and goes to the Dallas Stars, and that is the most honest interview in all the years that we've done the Free Agent Friends.
All right. So what did you think of that, Landy?
Yeah, I think, again, it goes back to this should have been a very, very big red flag for people going into last season without the contract. I really do think that the Sharks maybe misread the situation there a little bit. I know that they wanted to make the financials work. The moment Erik Karlsson came in, they knew they were going to have to pay a very hefty price to keep him in San Jose. So basically, the way that I see it, you make room for Karlsson and you give him a percentage of what Pavelski would have made. I think right now, to me, the biggest direction that this team is taking is more of an approach of, we will generate offense from the back end, and we will create better offensive players in the offensive zone if we have a lot of volume coming from the back end, whether that's volume with the Brent Burns wrister or whether that's the Erik Karlsson pull through the neutral zone. But basically, they're betting on the defense generating the offense. And I don't think it's an unreasonable stance. I really don't. You're basically trading a borderline all-star for a Norris Trophy defenseman. And if you just break it down purely stats-wise, you're going to have an 80-point player next year. I'm already calling both of them to be in the 70 to 80-point range between him and Burns. And that's a luxury that most teams don't have. So am I concerned now about the forward depth? Yes, I'm concerned. Am I concerned about the morale and the mental and, just absence of leadership? I think a little. We'll discuss a little bit more into who we think is going to grab the C next, but one of a kind kind of guy. So what do you do in that situation? I don't know. Doug Wilson had a number. My guess is it was probably I would say between 5.5 and 6 is probably what he wanted to bring him in at, and at 2 years. And ultimately Pavelski felt the extra year was more important. I think that he knew if he stayed in San Jose, he was going to have to take a pay cut. And there were a few rumblings out of Sportsnet from Elliot Friedman saying that Pavelski was a little butthurt, for lack of better vocabulary, about the Kane deal, and that he felt slighted because Kane was an outsider that garnered a 7-year deal, 7 years, $7 million against the cap per year.
Right.
And so I also think that had something to do, because, it's not really, I don't think it's coincidental that he signs for, 7 million AAV, and that's kind of what Kane had at 7 million AAV. So he thought he was a $7 million player, and there was a team that was going to give that to him. So more power to him. But you know what? The economics just were not going to work in San Jose with the amount of money that he wanted. I think this also is a little bit of an indictment on Doug Wilson, and I'll say it because of this. He still got $3.9 million of dead weight between Melker Karlsson and Aaron Dell sitting on the roster. And for what those two bring, you could have given Pavelski the extra $1 million or $1.5 million that it would have taken to keep him. That to me is what is, I guess, the most frustrating about it, is that there was cap space to be had, but it was going to require the money to be moved out. And it's possible that Doug Wilson tried to do that and there just weren't any takers. My guess is that's probably what happened. And you know what? In the end, his salary structure kind of bit him. That DW salary structure bit him.
Yeah, it bit him, but my thing is we will, and I doubt we'll ever know, is whether or not Pavelski was already in the talks when the Karlsson deal was going through, and perhaps that was pretty much done as to what Joe Pavelski wanted. To me, I think honestly, I think there was a number that they were all trying to work on and trying to make this thing work. Because I think Laney, I think it's safe to say Joe Thornton will come back for whatever you want to give him. And I think he was just trying to figure out, what can I do with Pavelski and Erik Karlsson, and then get to Timo Meier and Kevin LeBanc, and we'll get to the youngsters a little bit later in the program. But I know a lot of people have been giving Doug Wilson a lot of crap about it, and I can see the anger. I had a friend of mine, Thomas Hume, who's usually in the chat as well. Just beside himself. He had never been this more upset, since like Belfour went to the Stars, or when Brian Campbell went to the Blackhawks, just because of what transpired.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I mean, the only person that really is comparable is Owen. I mean, Buster to me is the player that is most closely relatable in insofar um, as the demeanor, insofar as like the depth of the character of the player, the ability to lead. I think they led in different ways, but I think that both were very effective in that role.
Yep.
Ah, boy. I mean, you know what? Dallas is getting a good one. They really are. And, if they don't become, second favorite in that division, I don't know what else they could do there. I mean, besides the moves that they made, they're a little thin on in their bottom six, but adding Pavelski definitely helps. It's the trickle down effect. I think they bought out Val Nichushkin, right?
Right.
And so, that's another player that they're going to have to replace somehow. But yeah, it's unfortunate. And I don't know what else you could really do besides making the cap room that Doug Wilson, may or may not have tried to make. Who knows? I mean, maybe Pavelski wasn't even on the radar to be a candidate to be re-signed. Maybe Doug Wilson said, hey, you know what? Like 2 years is what I'm comfortable with. We saw him do this with Marlowe. We saw him do this with Thornton. He's definitely got an MO as far as players who are in their prime, signing them to long-term deals, and players at the end of the rope or close to it, to those 1 to 2 year, bridge deals to give himself some protection. So it just sounds like Pavelski's camp was not singing the same tune.
And you know what? That's totally fine. And you know what, Joe Pavelski, thank you for what you brought to the organization. Thank you for great memories all around. But unfortunately, and I hate to say this because I'm, how many times we talked about me with Ray Whitney? How many times we talked about with Patrick Marleau? They come and go and they move on. And as much as you want to keep them around, there's just the thing. And I think Pavelski said later on the NHL Network, and I think Andy Mann's mentioning it right now. He said only teams on board with 3-year term were taking serious. Anything shorter in term was a non-starter, and the Sharks were at 2 years. It's the case. So, but you know what? Unfortunately, the move on, and so did the Sharks, and the Sharks have to move on from a lot of former, now former Sharks. They got eaten alive today. It seemed like.
Yeah, but the other thing too that I have been thinking about that I kind of wanted to touch on a little bit is loyalty runs both ways here. And the reason why I say this, and this is the devil's advocate point of view, and this is something that I wish would maybe get a little bit more, somebody could do some digging into this, and I'm not sure how exactly you would go about finding this information, but maybe a nudge, wink, wink, like, hey, when you retire, we'll take care of you. Like, you can be an assistant coach or some kind of player development or player ambassador. We'll get you some extra money and we'll take care of you. And I'm surprised that in a roundabout way, maybe Hasso or maybe somebody in the higher ups would have floated some kind of idea like that. Now, any kind of idea and any kind of whiff of this by the NHL, and that's collusion, and that, or not collusion, but that's that's cap circumvention, and you'll get definitely fined for that. And it's colluding with the player. But I'm surprised that we didn't kind of see something like that. And the reason why I say that is because you look at the Luongo buyout. Look at Luongo and what he's owed by the Florida organization and what he's owed by Vancouver.
Yeah. How sickening does Vancouver feel about him retiring?
Right. And so, I think that there might have been a nudge, nudge, wink, wink that Luongo was doing right by Florida, because the thing that's not really talked about, or that I haven't heard this angle, is that if Luongo was put on LTIR, the team pays for his rest of his contract. Now, he wanted to save some money for the team, so he retired to forfeit that bill over to Vancouver. And the actual money paid out is less for Florida, because it's only a buyout, or it's only a
he's
fraction.
retired.
It's a fraction of the penalty, right? So I think they are on the hook for 1.5 mil, and Vancouver is screwed.
Yeah.
So that to me is that smells of something fishy there, and I wonder, I wonder about the league and looking into that. But it's another creative way that if you ain't cheating, you're not trying kind of way that I think about it. But yeah,
and it's tough, and so is this. I mean, you can throw in Justin Braun's move here as well to this list, but that's a quarter of your roster now that is gone. So later, after Joe Pavelski signed, Jonas Donskoy, to me, got I think probably one of the most ridiculous deals in free agent frenzy today. I'm sorry, a guy who was on the Schneid for 4 months gets a 4-year, $15.6 million contract. Are you kidding me? The one
this smells like Mikkel Bodker to me.
Oh, it smells stinkier than Mikkel Bodker. And of all teams to know about that, it would be Colorado, who had Bodker for a couple of years. Gus Nyquist, the recent acquisition at the deadline. We're 14-less again, Landy. 4 years, $22 million. That reeks desperation by the Blue Jackets after they got completely gutted for going all in this past year.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go over the Donskoy number real quick and
go for it.
And we'll kind of go into the Gus Nyquist. You could see why Colorado would give him, that kind of a deal, because they did see him up close and personal in that second round series, and they must have seen something that they really liked. Jonas Donskoy, to me, if you put him in the right situation, is a 40-point player, maybe a ceiling of 50 points if you're lucky. So, for $4 million, if he makes, let's say he gets between 40 and 50 points next year for $4 million, not a bad contract when you see it that way. And if you're playing with Nathan McKinnon, you're going to get the looks. If you're playing with Mikko Rantanen, you're going to get the looks. And I wonder if maybe the Rantanen attraction had some pull there. I wonder if having another Finn on the team was important. It begs the question. And insofar as Gustav Nyquist, yes, it's a desperation move by Columbus. He's a poor man's Artemi Panarin, if you look and strain hard enough. But they had to do something, right? They had to come back to that marketplace after what we heard actually last night, that Columbus had tried to make a really big push last minute. The ownership, I guess, approved an $11.5 million AAV for Panarin. but he, wanted to go somewhere else. So, that being said, I think they felt that they needed to address that, and they got Gustav Nyquist. Nyquist is a little bit of an enigmatic player for me because you don't really know what exactly he is. He's not necessarily a pure goal scorer, but he's not necessarily the greatest playmaker either. He's kind of that second or third forward that is kind of in the middle of scoring plays, but not necessarily driving it, but also not necessarily, being a black hole of possession either. So he was an interesting player for me. I don't see it as too big of a loss because you see a growth and a maturation of a Kevin Labanc filling that role. Kevin came in last year, and we expected, maybe another 30 to 40 point season, and he ended up getting 56 points I think 56 points. So, with a little bit more growth and maturation, I feel like Labanc, will fill that void. Not a big loss to me. It's definitely nice to have a 70-point player on your team for sure. But to me, again, not a play driver for me.
To me, I think he was can be a versatile playmaker. He didn't show it too much in San Jose, but I thought he was going to be something of that realm down the road for the Sharks if they were to re-sign him, which of course we know today he didn't. The other one, which is interesting, is Joakim Ryan goes to LA 1 year for essentially the league minimum. There were rough goes with Joakim. He looked like a Bernsey Whisperer 2.0. One season, the next season he scratched for, Radim Shimmick.
I think that one, it's interesting that Los Angeles picks him up, and I think that we can see the cross-pollination there of Rob Blake, and he's definitely an admirer of the Sharks system insofar as how they create defensemen, what exactly their prospects go through. So he's definitely seen this player from afar and up close personal too, and they liked what they saw. And I mean, he could blossom into a Jake Muzzin-esque type player for them if given the right the right position, maybe playing with Doughty or someone like that, to be that kind of calming force. As soon as Shimmick hit the scene, though, and with the way that he plays, Peter DeBoer was enamored with him and wasn't going to give Joakim Ryan another shot. It just sucks that we couldn't get any kind of assets for this player, especially going into last season, because we had the overflow of D. I would have liked to have seen them maybe shop Ryan for, a recoup another draft pick or something like that. And so that's my only regret with Ryan, is just that, they didn't recoup any assets for him. But a good pickup for the Kings, and you know what? It's a solid ad. At worst you get a 5-6 defenseman. At best you could get a 3 defenseman, maybe a 3-4 defenseman. I think that's what his ceiling is, and they definitely need the help in the back end for sure.
That's for darn sure. I mean, they need help in all sorts of ways. So this one works out pretty well for them, and at least I think so. Good luck to Joakim. Thanks for everything you've done, and well, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But let's get to some of the comments in the chat so far. If you haven't already, join us in the chat. And if you haven't already, subscribe. We're one away from 1,600. We would love to knock that out tonight. In fact, we just did. So thank you to everyone who have subscribed. We are now at 1,600 subscribers. The other day, we hit over 4,000 on the Twitter machine, and I think almost 1,200 on the Instagram. So we can't do this without you, and we do this for you because you thrive for the expanded Sharks coverage. So thank you very much.
So I want to, before we kind of go over that, I think we should kind of address the leadership void, and I think we should also address a good point that was brought up in the chat.
Go ahead.
One, I think we have a good idea of who will be captain. I want to kind of hear your take first, Eric, but the more interesting thing I think we can talk about, and I'd like to talk about it first, is do you think the other team members look at Erik Karlsson and say, look, buddy, you didn't take any kind of a discount. You're the reason why Pavelski is gone. Do you think that there could be any kind of split factions in the dressing room because of this and because of how beloved Pavelski is? I think that that's a really great point. I don't know who exactly brought that up, but that's a really, really good point.
Mm-hmm.
And filling that leadership void, to me, there are only two candidates, and one doesn't have a letter yet, but he has been the epitome of joy. And
gee, I wonder, just what you saying joy, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Joy and perseverance, and I think the world of this player, and I think Tomas Hertl, to me, is I think the better choice to, again, re-sew the fabric of the team. Having said that, my odds are it's going to be Couture. I think Couture will get the C, and that's not a bad choice either. He's a very cerebral player. He's a player that will tell you like it is, and a player that has matured so much since the time he was brought up as a kid. We had some rumblings about the different kinds of shenanigans that Cooch would get into, but that seems to have quieted down. He seems to have really put the roots down in San Jose, and it's a fine choice for a captain. Reminds me a lot of Dan Boyle in the way he would be introspective. But I want to hear from you, Eric, first on the rift in the locker room, the EK65 signing fallout, and who you think should be the captain going forward.
I think honestly, I think there's only one choice. And which is weird to say because you have a potential of having two former Sharks captains in the locker room for next season. And it's Logan Couture. Logan, to me, I think just oozes the leadership and oozes the desire and the passion for this team. We saw it with him doing, getting that first goal in Game 7 on the power play, and he's like, just that's one. And yes, Jumbo was the one that kind of started riling up the troops and everything. But to me, that's the only one. I don't think Hurdle's ready yet, and it's nothing against him, but I think it's just a little early for it.
Definitely gets a letter, I think, though, right?
It varies to be seen. I mean, last year we had Pavelski with the C, Couture with an A, and Jumbo with an A. I mean, I'm sure Jumbo's going to keep his A. To me, Couture gets the C, and it's just one more.
I would say Hertl gets the A. No,
well, Burns would be the one that Burns would get the one that he usually gets. When somebody gets injured, Burns is the one with the A. Now the other option that they could do is do what they've done, in the years with Todd McClellan, where they had two different A's at home and two different A's on the road. We saw like Clo and Boyle have the A's, and then Patty would have it and somebody else had it in that time. That's the possibility too. and you have leadership too. I mean, Jumbo, potentially Patrick Marleau, Erik Karlsson. Remember, he was the captain for the Senators for a few years, and there's that possibility too. So you have a lot of choices to go with, your season A's, and it remains to be seen, what they would do. As for the potential rift with Erik Karlsson, man, I sure hell's hope not. Because if the team is worrying about a player that's no longer with the team, and during games or during the season, then their heads are not in the game,
Right.
at all. You know, as painful as it was, when they traded for Joe Thornton, that were great guys in the locker room. Brad Stewart, Wayne Primo, Marco Sturm. They lost those guys. Devin Setaguchi, what an emotional leader he was during the playoff run, and then a few months later he gets traded for
Sign
Brent
and trade.
Burns.
Sign and trade.
Yeah. I mean, you have, and we could go on about some of the trades that we've seen before.
Well, let's, before we go into that though, there is also one other thing that I want to bring up. At the beginning of the whole retool, rebuild phase that we had a few years ago, there was put into a succession plan after Thornton and Marleau would be gone. And I think the plan also included for Pavelski to be gone. And I think that this is a natural extension of that progression.
Right.
I feel like Couture has been in waiting for a long time.
Yeah.
I think he's ready to take the mantle of the team, and I think that they're putting it on him. I think that they're putting it on him, and I think that they're putting it on Hurdle. And it's just interesting the way to see it unfurl after years, of how this team responded to such adversity, how this team has responded to success. So to me, that's also a very interesting point, is just that this has been a very graceful transition of power from old Sharks to new Sharks. Yes, we did have the Band-Aid that was Patrick Marleau, but in the end, that turns out correct. I think at the end of the day, I think we're going to see the same thing with Pavelski. It hurts me to say that, but I think that third year is not going to be pretty.
And that's the point, Landy, is that you have to have a succession plan. I mean, you don't want to. Yeah, we wish these guys could play forever. I mean, my gosh, it'd be great to have Owen Nolan play forever. But this is an NHL 19. This is the NHL. And you can only do so much. And honestly, being clutch, being a leader, being the guy to say, get on my back, let's go. Those three qualities right now are what Logan Couture has. He's been a leader. He's had an A for quite some time. He's been clutch. I mean, my gosh, the Shark store has t-shirts that say Couture on them. And it's one of those things that this team can use. Yeah. Is it a different type of leader? Yeah. Is it a tell it like it is? Yeah. He's kind of like Dan Boyle, who I think many of us thought the Sharks would have had as a captain. So I think it's going to be interesting. So,
I don't has the Sharks ever had a leader quite like Couture before? I
would say maybe Owen Nolan.
Yeah. Okay, I can see the comparison there insofar as the way that he leads.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. That's an apt comparison, I would say. But yeah, I mean, look, the guy has. I think he led the forwards in scoring last year, right?
Yeah. I mean, Pavelski led with 38 goals, but Couture, leading goal scorer, even after he was eliminated in the playoffs in round 3. So,
yeah, it's his team now. It's Couture's turn.
Yep.
It's his team, and really it's been a very it's been a pleasure to watch him develop as a player. You know, that pasty faced kid that came up from Woo, you know, playing against Detroit and playing against the Blackhawks and being that kind of ace in the hole for the team, and then missing out on the Calder the next year just by a few votes, you know, to a player that broke his palate. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, you talk about another homegrown player that, you know, is a special one that the Sharks were able to hone in on, a good character guy. I mean, it's Couture, and again, I think that this succession plan, I think that this was it and it's been at least put into place since last year. I think they knew last year Joe wasn't coming back, to be honest.
And if that, for that matter, I think right now Hurdle may be that one in the waiting. You know, so so Hurdle might be taking, you know, his leadership, you know, quality or next in line per se. We got a lot of people in the chat right now. We got to get to them. This is crazy. Thank you to the 60 people who are watching, over 1,600 subscribers. We thank you very much. Let's get to a super chat comment. Thank you, Justin My Head. What do you say to the fans who hella blame EK65? To me, I don't think.
No, if you want to blame anything, and poor Eric, he AOL'd there. You just AOL'd there, buddy.
Of course I did. Why? It wouldn't be a show if I didn't, right?
Right.
All right, but you know, what do you say to fans who are really blaming on Erik Karlsson right now?
Would you rather him not be here? You know, that's the thing. The guy was going to become the highest paid defenseman, whether it was going to be the Sharks or somebody else. You had a bunch of valuable assets that were given to get this player. Is he one-dimensional at times? I think very much so, but the guy is generational, and you can't really you can put a price tag to it, and I think that they did. But again, I don't think that there has been as potent an offensive force on the blue line since maybe, oh boy,
quite some time.
It would be probably Niedermeyer and Pronger, and then before that, it would have been, geez, I don't know, a Canadiens team or
an Oilers squad, or even
Boston,
or the Islanders in the 80s.
Yeah, Denny Potvin. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so again, do you want the player or not? You know, and that's the thing. It's do you want the player or not? And that was what he was going to take. They knew it when they were getting into it. I think that they were okay with that. I think that they misread Pavelski a little bit. I thought that they were probably thinking he was going to take a hometown discount. Didn't. But I think that Doug Wilson's got a plan A, B, and C.
Oh yeah.
You know, I think that this was a contingency plan, and I think it was a highly likely parting of ways, because I think the other thing too that we kind of had to read the tea leaves was during the year. I mean, Pavelski was very quiet on his contract. You know, he's like, yeah, I want to come back. Yeah, you know, we'll get it done. But there wasn't like it seemed almost like it wasn't a foregone conclusion. You know, it wasn't like Jumbo staying, you know, oh, I'm a Shark and that's it. And I think that, you know, I think that the market dictated that. And you know what? It's a 40 goal scorer for $7 million, or about a 40 goal scorer. So,
yeah. So let's get more on there. Nick Neftepitz, make Hurdle captain and have Cooch be an assistant and be his interpreter. To which I say,
whoa! Let's go, Sharks! Whoa! We did! We made it! Whoa!
I'm sorry. I get too much fun with Hurdle there. In that that realm. AJ, good evening to you, sir. Something I don't think you're considering. Couture is honest, but he's quiet. And he went on to say, maybe Vlasic's the one. Vlasic was very quiet himself early on, and boy, howdy, has he blossomed there, Landy. And then just a lot of talk about and a lot of negativity on the team right now. JF Turner, exactly, Eric. I don't know which Eric you're talking about. Team needs to move on and focus on the cup chase. Mr. Chango DeBoer needs to make sure all players are ready. It's all about the team. AO 12345 fact or fiction, Landy. I'll ask you this: PDB gets fired next season. I think we're already worried about firing the coach already.
Well, I think it's a valid point. I think that there's a lot of vitriol towards Peter DeBoer. I think that there was a lot of blame placed on him for ice time and utilization last season. They just signed that 3-year deal. It would have to be a disastrous start. I mean, we're talking like, let's say like 5, 10, and 10 or something like that, like just an abysmal, like Oilers like start or Coyotes like start. I think it would take something very epic. The Sharks have traditionally not been frugal. They've been, willing to pay the money, but they're smart about their money. They're smart about the buyouts. They're smart about how they pay coaches. They don't pick an up-and-comer, but they pick an up-and-comer and they don't pick a marquee kind of coach. So the smart money says he'll probably live out that contract, or at least to the second year of that contract, because it is a freshly dried contract as far as the ink goes on the paper. It would have to be a disastrous start to me.
Well, I mean, they almost had a disastrous start early on, and in fact, I think you even called it out in this right around the Ottawa game that they need to fire him. To me, I'm in the similar situation that if they get off to a disastrous start, then there'll be that issue. However, that being said, he is their coach. They just re-signed him, and to be honest, I mean, you talk about how he's going to be, he's got that freshly inked. Well, so did Kevin Constantine back in 1995, and he had a disastrous start, and he was gone for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and the it's not without precedent. That's definitely for sure. I also think, though, that Bob Boughner is going to do wonders to rejuvenate the staff. I think, he's going to be, he's coming from a place that he had all of this pressure to now where he can kind of be creative again and can work in the confines of the coaching staff. So I think that that's going to be a very good boost for Peter DeBoer. And quite frankly, he's going to have to adapt his offense to, make up for the fact that there's not a Pavelski on the team anymore. So I think he's going to have his work cut out for him this season. And he's also going to have to integrate a young player before he wants to. There is going to be a winger or a depth centerman that is going to need to play at least 10 minutes a night that he is not very comfortable with. And he's going to have to get over that. And he's going to have to integrate and delicately balance the carrot to rod mentality on that player, whoever it may be.
I completely agree. And so Ivan Chekovich, Sasha Shemilovsky, Joachim Blickfield, if you're watching, be prepared.
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing too that shouldn't be glossed over here, is that there are players coming, right? They needed to make some room on the roster. Yep. It hurt to do it this way. It hurt to not have a player re-sign, a franchise face player re-sign. But the flip side of that is you get to see what Sasha Chmelevski is, or Ivan Chukovic, or again, Joachim Blickfield. I mean, there are guys on there, on the Barracuda, or deeper within the prospect pool. I actually think that Mario Ferraro will come out and take a spot. I really believe that. I think he's the next Vlasic in waiting, and I think that he'll start the season with the Sharks.
Yeah. Robin Malloy. I'm looking forward to seeing this new version of the Sharks. I think there will be growing pains, but this team will be competitive. I completely agree. Gooch says a lot more than Vlasic. Okay, yeah. Also, Vlasic likes to tell all the other opposing players are F faces, so that's great. You know,
Laurel, thank you so much for the donation.
Thank you very much, Laurel. Appreciate it, my dear. Trying to keep going through the chat here. Mr. Changeo, stop blaming EK. Pavelski took the money in term. And I think that's the case. And let's also be honest here, too. Yeah, we're talking about an $81.5 million salary cap. That might be, honestly, the difference between Pavelski being here and not, besides term. So let's not,
No, I think that one caught I think that there were contingency plans in place for this eventuality, but I think the word on the street was it came in low. And this is a direct result of the escrow, and it's growing, it's ballooning out of control, and the players had kind of had enough about it. And you know what? This is the way to do it. So, I think we have to operate under the assumption that these next 2 years are going to be a stagnant cap. I foresee next year probably coming in 82.5, maybe 82. And then you get the US television deal. Then you start to get all of the other sponsorship things kind of going out. And then we get more money back in. So I think when Seattle comes in, I think we might be looking at closer to a 90 to maybe $95 million cap. And I think that's the other thing that we have to really consider when we take into context the EK65 signing. And the percentage of his cap will change when the cap goes up. And I think that they modeled that. I think that they knew what kind of player that was. Remember how we were saying that, the $7 million player is the $5 million player of 4 years ago?
Yeah.
The inflation factor here, I think that that's what's at play.
Remember how everybody was so scared about Brent Burns signing an 8-year, $64 million contract with an $8 million annual AAV? Doesn't look too bad now.
Yeah.
AJ in the chat, right or wrong, if EK65 is injured next season for any length of time, fans will jump on DW fast. The last thing DW needs is a defensive version of Havlet. I agree. Let's also another thing too, Landy. Brent Burns was a little injury prone himself when he was with Minnesota. Definitely has changed his ways now. I mean, yeah, he's missed some games here and there, but it's the thing that it is, and unfortunately, this is what pro sports ends up being. I mean, let's be real here.
Life of pro sports, right? I mean, Joe Montana, who we thought would be irreplaceable, gets replaced by Steve Young, and you find out what you have in that player. I mean, I also think going forward, Erik Karlsson's not going to have as much say as he did in the previous season as to when and where he plays. I really think that the coaching staff will have a better idea of the player, and if he says, I can do this, but they know in the back of their mind that he's really not ready yet, I think they have another year of understanding him. The Mike Potenza and the conditioning crew have another year to understand the player and the injuries. And from everything that we hear, the Sharks are very close to the top insofar as sports medicine and sports analytics, insofar as like the medical perspective. So yes, the injury history concerns, but I don't think it concerns as much as the alarmist would have you on Twitter. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. So let's get all the negativity out. Let's just get it out. It's over. It's done with. Let's talk about some good news. All right. Can we talk about some good news?
It's Timo time.
That's right. His time is extended, folks. He signs a 4-year, $24 million contract with a $6 million AAV with some weird numbers at the end where his third year is only $4 million, but his last year is $10 million. We'll get into that a little bit, but his stats in the league, 3 goals in 31 games for his rookie year, 1 game a winning goal. 2017-18, he was starting to get up there as well. 21 goals, 15 assists, 36 points, 4 game winning goals. This year he did take a big step up. He gets his 30 goal season, 36 assists, 66 points. Maybe that's why Pavelski was a little more expendable. 7 game winning goals, and Landy, let's not forget as well. He was on a crazy fire stretch to begin last season.
You're looking at a player that will be, I think, a 75-point player. I'm going to put that in stone and be my final answer for what I think his point total will be. I have him. I will take the over on 75 points. This is a player that has figured it out, how to use his tools that he has, developed more accuracy upon his shot, developed better skating, a player that took tremendous strides, and we will see another maturation, I think, of Timo Meier going into the coming years of that contract in year 3 and 4. I think we'll be saying, wow, for $6 million a year, that's insane that Doug Wilson was able to get that kind of a value for that player.
Yeah.
That being said, one other key piece of information, the expiration date of this contract still falls in the RFA window, and that cannot be overlooked because come next contract time, the Sharks have leverage. They can offer the 8-year deal. They can keep the player out of free agency and avoid a Pavelski-like situation because of the way that the contract was structured. I think this is why it came in a little higher than what I was expecting.
Mhm.
I was expecting in the $4.5 to $5 million range. At the same term, maybe shorter. I was thinking maybe he might get a 3-year deal, but I think that this is kind of a compromise between maybe what the Sharks would have wanted to do with the shorter term, shorter AAV or smaller AAV, and the longer type deal that his camp was probably searching for, and the higher cap hit. So I think that this was the compromise. I'm damn happy that they signed it when they did, because oh my God, that Sebastian Aho offer sheet kind of put a quiver in my nether.
Yeah, and AJ mentioned in chat, there weren't many people knocking at the door. Well, I think he mentioned that he wanted to stay a little bit more. But yeah, let's get to some of the signings that happened league wide, or offer sheets. I mean, we haven't had an offer sheet in quite some time, and it actually happened, and it wasn't Mitch Marner yet. Sebastian Aho. And just a scotch, like literally the scotchiest of scotch, under 8.5 mil. He signs an offer sheet with the Montreal Canadiens. The Hurricanes have 7 days to match it. And man, could you give up a first, second, and third for Sebastian Aho? I mean, he is
he's a number 1 center, right?
and he's going to look great in Montreal if they take him.
Yeah, I mean, now you've got him, and you've got The Finnish kid that they took. I can't remember his name.
In the draft?
Yeah, last year. Their top pick.
Oh, Kakaniemi.
Kakaniemi. There we go. You know, him, Kakaniemi up the middle. All of a sudden, Montreal's center problem kind of starts to, get a little bit better here. So, and I really don't have a lot of faith in Montreal's drafting and development. So it makes sense. And Carolina would be stupid not to match. But from what we hear, Carolina's owner is very particular about the numbers. And there's a little bit of a wrinkle. Everybody thought that the offer sheet number was a little low for Sebastian Aho. I think, one, it's the compensation. But a little wrinkle that Montreal put in that offer sheet was how the money was distributed, right? A lot of it's in signing bonus. A lot of it requires strokes of big checks at one time. And the Canadiens, Molson doesn't care. He'll use that beer money all day. and he's like, I don't care the way I pay my players. But Dundon, I have a feeling that this is going to be a little bit more of a interesting saga than people will give it credit for. I think in the end, Carolina will match, but I think that's the wrinkle that you have to look at it, the way that the salary is structured. I think that from a perspective of Sebastian Aho, you know what? There's no harm in signing the offer sheet. That's a minimum of what you would get. And he knew that Carolina was going to lowball him. They were probably going to have protracted negotiations. This way he gets it done. He's like, okay, you know what? I don't want you guys dictating my value. I want the open market to dictate my value.
Yeah.
He did it. He maximized the RFA rules and the way that you can get contracts. Good for him. Good for him. And I do not fault him, because I'm sure Carolina was going to really put the screws to him.
Oh yeah, big time. It's just interesting how this is going to all turn out. So for sure. Let's get to some of the other ones that have been noteworthy. Sergei Bobrovsky signs a 7-year, $70 million contract with the Florida Panthers. I mean, honestly, Landy, I 10 mil per for a goaltender that has won how many playoff series in the last few years? Like one?
I mean,
at the same time, yes.
This reeks of Carey Price. And now look at that contract. It's not going to be pretty, and I venture to say year 4.
No, will he come out and say my contract sucks? I mean, that's what you got goaltenders for in Florida, going that way. So Bobrovsky goes to Florida. His former Columbus teammate, Artemi Panarin, goes to the Rangers. The probably the biggest one in the free agent market, and he goes home with a hefty check, and all of a sudden the Rangers, who wrote a letter to their supporters saying, hey, we're going to embrace this rebuild, we're going to go for it here, now all of a sudden have a really good team. And
Jeff Gordon did a hell of a job with his drafting, and the amount of first picks that he's extracted for players that were aging or players that were not part of the team going forward. I mean, Chris Kreider kind of still hangs out in the wind, and he's an interesting fellow to me. But he's not afraid of doing that. And you know what? New York would bounce back in 3 years, 2 years, and not been competitive for maybe 2 years. That's crazy. And good on that ownership team and the management team for sticking to a plan and really getting it right. I have no problem with the Panarin deal. I feel like that was what he was going to get anyways. They're adding him to, him and Capo. I mean, that's going to be fun to watch.
And
That's gonna be
you throw in Sabinajad in there, or Nemestikov. I mean, that's going to be a really nice look with the Rangers. So they might be back on there. What else did we find out?
Robin Leonard. Interesting on the Robert Leonard saga. Goes to Chicago on a 1-year deal. I think a lot has to be made of the fact that he decides to leave his support system and leaves his personal blanket, so to speak. So you wonder how the mental aspect of the game for him. But Lou probably played hardball with him.
Oh,
That's
for
his
sure.
style, and I'm sure that probably was a contentious negotiation.
Anders Lee re-signs with the Islanders, and man, oh man, if Anders Lee goes to another team and it's not the Islanders, man, the Islanders are hating life if they didn't get that one.
I mean, heck, I would have, if I were the Sharks, I would have been looking at Anders Lee. That's a good guy to replace Pavelski.
Yep.
That's he's a younger Pavelski to me.
Matt Zuccarello goes to Minnesota with a 5-year, $30 million contract. I think that's a good pickup for Minnesota. It's going to be interesting to see what they do.
They've got those 2 albatross contracts hanging over them. It's going to be tough for them to wiggle out of those. It's interesting. I think that they're still going to be stuck in limbo. They're going to be a bubble team. I don't think that this moved the needle that much.
A goaltending swap of sorts. Cam Talbot, even though he finished up with Philly, was with Edmonton. Now he's with Calgary. Mike Smith was with Calgary. Now he's with Edmonton. So some goaltending depth going, switching around in Alberta.
Neither of which really solves the issues that are going on in either Alberta team. I don't want Cam Talbot. I wouldn't want Cam Talbot to really bank on the future of the team with him. I mean, they have David Rittich, and I think that he'll probably start as number 1. But,
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, for a team that's got Stanley Cup aspirations and was promptly dispatched in the first round, not a good way to follow up the goaltending, in my opinion. I think, I don't think that was good. If I was, I would have probably taken a swing at Leonard if I was Calgary.
And maybe they did and just struck out, unfortunately. Valtteri Filppula goes back to Detroit, where he started his career in that one. Curtis Lazar goes to Buffalo. Matt Duchene leaves Columbus. Man, Columbus is just not going to have a good day today.
That was a bloodletting.
Duchene goes to Nashville like we expected. 7 years, $56 million.
Worst kept secret in the NHL.
Former Shark Ryan Carpenter goes from Vegas to Chicago. 3 years, $3 million. Obviously, a nice depth pickup for them. Jason Spezza signs for the minimum in Toronto, following a crazy, Toronto Ottawa swap. That just
that was the
my
first
mind.
one. Yeah, that was the first one, and then the second one with Colorado a little bit later, right?
And that's a big one. Tyson Barrie is now a member of the Leafs, and that's a great pickup for offensive defensemen that the Leafs desperately needed.
So you basically traded Kadri for Spezza. Not a bad trade, in my opinion. I mean, Spezza's at the end of the rope, but I think that there's still a little bit of tire left on that tread. Or a little bit of tread left on that tire, excuse me. But damn, you talk about needing a number 1 defenseman and really shoring up a defense. And, Kyle Dubas was looking kind of like a dope there for a little bit. He gets Tyson Barrie, and they're getting a hell of a defenseman. Colorado has an embarrassment of riches on the back end all of a sudden, so they're not going to really feel that.
No.
Cale Makar, I mean, they had to make room for him, so bye-bye Tyson Barrie.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was a good pickup for both teams. Definitely a win-win for both. And Toronto wants to continue to keep the window open, but they've got a big contentious signing that they still have not done. So
Yeah. Burge 791. What happens to Marner? No clue. I mean, honestly, no clue on that one. It's gonna be.
He could repeat of Nylander. I would not be surprised.
I unfortunately would not be surprised if that happened. And my goodness, if they went through that again, oh, Dubas might be in the hot seat if that actually happens again.
Yeah.
And they're
Avs have somebody was saying, Mr. Chongo was saying Avs don't have a goalie. They have Philip Grubauer. They're going to be okay.
yeah. Yeah, they're going to be okay. So they essentially the Leafs have like 3 spots. You know, they have Alex Kerfoot, who also came in that Tyson Berry trade. Marner and Cody Ceci is arbitration eligible as a restricted free agent. And let me remind each other, Cat Friendly, thank you for being in existence. I appreciate this immensely, so much. So let's see what else was there.
Corey Perry.
Corey Perry goes to Dallas as well for $1.5 million plus potentially almost $2 million in incentives. Not surprised there, but Dallas is going to definitely give the Central a run for their money after going to Game 7 double overtime in the second round and lost to it.
Yeah, there's a Dion Phaneuf still on the table there. I that might be a Sharks centric kind of pickup for the bottom pairing if he comes in at a low, a low salary or the league minimum basically. I'm still looking at Michael Furlan. I like him. I think he would be a sandpaper player that the Sharks are sorely missing. It's an element that they thought that they were getting with Evander Kane, but sadly we kind of saw him missing in action there. I like him. I think he would be a good player to get, but it's all about the money. What's he going to ask for? And you still have Kevin LeBanc to worry about.
Yep, and that's Sharks now have essentially $7 million to play with. You probably get 3 or 4 to LeBanc, and then whatever else you need to fill the void. I mean, at this point, you have your goaltenders set to go. You have your defenseman, Tim Heed. That's another one we didn't mention today. 1 year, $960,000, and that's a good solid pickup there. But yeah,
he's ready.
You essentially have LeBanc, Gambrell, Jumbo, and probably Patrick Marleau, or the 4 forwards that you need to get in with $7.8 million.
Yeah. I just want to ask for everybody. I got a new camera mount here. So is everybody liking this new position as far as the camera goes? I just wanted to throw that for the chat real quick.
Yeah, I like it.
But again, there's room to be made if there's somebody willing to take on the Melker Karlsson deal and Aaron Dell, and I'm still not convinced that they won't try to get rid of those players.
Laurel saying, "Yep, we can see more laundry than ever." AJ, do not discount John Scott saying today
that he would play for the Barracuda and come up for the Vegas games.
Yes.
Yes, Eric, you AOL'd again.
Yes. That's why I had you broadcast the show, not me. Yeah, so there's that for sure. Haley for Cappy. I don't think that's gonna happen.
Oh, if Haley's signed again, there will be a shit fit in Sharks Twitter. Yeah. Oh my God. I can just see the Circling the Cup guys like literally exploding. Ben, I think from the Circling the Cup podcast, I think he would explode.
Yeah, right. Right. Braden Point isn't signed yet. That's another one that's out there. That one's going to be quite interesting. and now they have plenty of room, because they did not get Pavs. So
That
and-
would have been scary. Him going to Tampa Bay, as
no
far
kidding.
as how stacked they would have been.
And so in the top 3 of cap friendly for UFAs, Fanuf number 1, Marlowe number 2. You know who number 3 is?
Joe Thornton.
You can add one more to the population of Palmerville. Yeah, we should mention, those infamous Win It for Jumbo shirts, we have 3 left, size large. You can get them on sale at tealtownusa.com. Working on some designs for next season. Can't wait to share them with you on that one. Chat. Let's see. Any questions, comments?
Yeah, for a pause for hockey. Is Spot coming back? Yes, he is. Steve Spot will return. Talk about a guy who really needs to
change the power play.
Put some magic pixie dust on the power play.
Well, let's put it this way. Outside, maybe Hurdle, who's going to be tipping pucks? You're going to have to come up with a different play, and that's already one thing you're going to change for sure. So,
and better integration of Erik Karlsson, because that whole dick dance between him and Brent Burns on the number 1 unit was just horrible to watch.
So,
yeah.
So with that, we bring a close, I guess, to the proceedings here. But chat, let's get your final burn for these. I want my money back. What?
Pixie dust on the power play.
Yes. Yeah, and Kane already admitted in Instagram he needs to start working on tipping pucks for sure. Pat Maroon.
Interesting, but he's slow, and the Sharks already have a lot of those kind of players. So, I like him for the physicality, but I don't see it. I would rather take a flyer on Dzingel or on Michael Furlan.
Question being is who's going to move, and that's an interesting point.
Yeah, I mean, there is Brendan Dillon still sitting there. I mean, that's another guy that could be a cap casualty.
Yeah, AO saying just what we need, more old and slow players.
Right.
Yeah, that's for sure. All right. The single, of course. Robin Molloy saying Burns moves to the OV dot. EK65 QB's the power play. So
I like that.
Andy Man, Jamie again is still available. No.
AJ saying, why does Landy always broadcast from a Goodwill? Oh my god!
You knew that was coming, man. If he's in the chat, I mean, my gosh,
I know.
It at least you're not showing off the man bun right now. Come on now.
Oh, I took it off for the evening because I felt the AJ prodding and poking would soon begin.
Oh boy. So there's that one. Yeah, Landy's goodwill goes well with Kura's AOL. Yeah, whatever. All right. Well, I think that is getting to the point where we need to wrap things up. We appreciate you immensely through this. I mean, now the fun really begins. When news breaks, we'll bring it to you. So, catch us everywhere. We're always available at tealtownusa.com or your favorite podcatcher, whether it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Wow, great inspiring names there, guys. SoundCloud, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, of course. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We want to thank officially over 1,600 of you that subscribe to it. 1,602 now, so we appreciate it. Tell all your friends. Give us a thumbs up for this. Our next show, we're not quite sure. When Jumbo signs, we probably will have one. If Patty comes in, Cheryl, we did discuss Joakim Ryan going to LA. I think Laney mentioned it was a good depth pickup. So we'll see. LeBanc, when that happens, we'll bring that to you. That should be an interesting one for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be on vacation the end of July, the first couple of weeks of August. So,
Who said?
well, I am going back to the country that I grew up in. I will be going to England for a week and then Ireland for a week. So, yeah, the little American goes back and visits the land of his youth, so to speak. Yeah, I spent the years of 1993 to 2000 in Thetford, England.
I swear I thought you said you were from Mountain View.
I was born in Mountain View. And I lived in the Bay Area for 8-9 months, and then left for Italy and spent 2 years there, and been in San Diego since we got back in 2000. But San Jose has always been home because we would spend months and months of time back in the States. And so that was my home away from home while I was abroad. So
Gotcha. Yeah, AJ mentioning our Pavs tribute video. Check that out. By all means, do that. New articles on the website, and we'll be definitely
do no laundry stand. I like
very nice, AJ. But like we said, now this is kind of where it starts to get a little quiet on the hockey front. We'll definitely be checking in with you here and there throughout the summer. So by all means, check us out on tealtownusa.com. Like we said, we got some videos up of saluting Pavs. We have articles out on what we have. We'll have prospect reports. We'll have a recap of the prospect scrimmage soon. So we're definitely opening up our fins and taking flight, because it's going to be a fun one. So with that, we'll go ahead.
Oh, also, I think during the summer we will announce another round of candidacy to get your voice on the Teal Town USA podcast. So again, we will announce this a little bit later on in the summertime, but we are looking for some more help.
Yeah, definitely.
So keep that on the calendars too, folks.
So, and don't forget to follow us on Instagram. We're over, I think, 1,200. Is that right, AJ? Over 4,000 on the Twitter machine. So be on the lookout when we return. And so with that, we bring a close. Mr. Landy, your final thoughts and where the people can find you besides in Europe.
Final thoughts are the logo on the front is bigger than the nameplate on the back. Got to have loyalty to the crest first before the nameplate, unfortunately. And so, yeah, we continue to truck along. We've got a player now. Gives us a reason to watch Dallas, that's for sure. And as far as where you can find me on all of the social media using my first name, Eric, that's spelled E-R-I-K. That's Landy, L-A-N-D-I. And, I could not end a podcast without saying all the social media garbage.
Indeed. Well, thank you very much, Landy, for joining me. I am Eric Curra. You can find me on the Twitter and the Instagram at PuckGuy14. We'll be back with you when news breaks. We will bring it to you on Teal Town USA on virtually every possible platform we could bring it to you. So, man, it's been a fun ride, and it's hopefully only get better as we move on. So until then, we thank you for watching. Let me get the graphic up here. That way we can send you out with a nice look there. Thank you for watching, and until we see you again, keep it real, keep it teal, keep it real teal. Thank you, everyone, for supporting us. We will see you in the very, very near future.
And when news breaks, we'll fix it.
That's right. Complete with super glue and duct tape.
Have a good night, everybody.